All right, everyone, I'm back at you with another quick hitter video here, just doing optimization of your stem detector gain and offset here. So there's a couple ways you can do this, and I'm going to show you both of these ways here. So this is an interesting sample because we've got a bunch of different layers here, each of them with different signals. So one thing you can do is you can look over here at the histogram, and you can see this this indicator here. Okay, so you're basically trying to get this to take up like the middle portion of this. So this isn't too bad. Now, of course, as we increase the dwell time here, this is going to change, right? So, and again, if we did like frame integration, we probably want to put this higher to give us an idea about what our final image would look like in terms of signal to noise. But we could boost this probably a little bit and bring this down. And then if you click on this, right, one thing to keep in mind is this is applying a histogram stretch, so it could be clipping some of the data. So you can see right here the max in the image is 46,000, but what its actual max is more like 60, okay? So you're actually getting some clipping. So that's one thing you have to keep in mind if you use this approach is if you rely on this, you may be actually getting some clipping of the data, okay? So now your other option is to use the detector signal, okay? So if you turn on scope tool, and now if you have these layers like this, really the way to do this is to rotate this 90 degrees so you have something like this, okay? So, and this allows you to optimize every single one of or optimize your settings with everything in parallel. Okay, so if you have vacuum, you usually want this line to be down at the blue dashed area. Okay, and then again we can boost this a little bit. Okay, so this is pretty good, right? If you see where we're hitting the highest, right about here in the dashed red, and again, right, the maximum here. This is actually a little bit higher than what we're seeing here, okay? So one thing you can do, if you wanted to use the absolute limits, right, you can uncheck this, and then you can actually type in here, okay? So now that's without any clipping of the data, and then the minimum is about the minimum here, okay? So that's how you can remove the clipping and use the absolute limits. You just have to turn off auto levels here. So if you turn that on, it's going to try to apply a histogram stretch. In something like this, which has a really high dynamic range, right, you have really bright areas next to really dark areas, it's not uncommon to get a little bit of clipping, okay, with your image because of how it's doing the auto levels. So just something to keep in mind, right? But again, you can alleviate that, just disable auto levels, and then you can put whatever you want here, okay? So if your max is 55,000, right, put 55,000. Okay, that's not going to change this slider here, okay? That's independent. This is just what you're setting the contrast limits to be, okay? You're setting your peak white to be 55,000 and your peak black or your peak black to be 17,000 approximately, okay? So you can see, right, this does a little bit better job of removing the clipping, right? Because, we're really not clipping anymore. Although according to this, depending on the scan configuration, we might be getting just a slight amount, but this is much better than what we were getting here, okay? You can do the same thing. So let me go ahead and do a single pass image. I know I just talked about doing DCFI, but for something like this, it's far less critical since it's not atomic resolution. So let me switch this back over, and let me go ahead and just do a single pass image. And then I'll show you how this is, of course, working on the live picture. So let me show you how we can do this on the acquired image as well, because this is just the live picture. Obviously, we want to do this on the acquired image. Okay, let me blank the beam so we're not pasting it. Okay, so same thing here. Click on histogram. You can look at the maximum and the minimum. And you can see the minimum is basically what we're seeing here based on auto levels. And again, you can just type in the max, which is 57,250 basically. And if you do that, it automatically turns off auto levels, okay? So now you're removing any of the clipping, okay? And then if you save this, so I just did Control S, then it will export it with these contrast limits, okay? Otherwise, if you just have it on auto levels and you save it, then it's going to export it with these contrast limits, okay? So you can keep that in mind. So that's the quick hitter video I wanted to share with you about adjusting your contrast and brightness. I would pay attention to this number, by the way, when you're doing the live scan, because regardless of what you're seeing up here, you don't want this to clip the total limit, which is about 65,000 counts, okay? So if I increase this more, just to show you here, see, now I'm actually clipping the detector. Even though it says right here that I'm not, I actually am doing that. So again, right, you wouldn't want to, rely, and if I turn on the scope tool, right, even though this doesn't show that, it actually kind of does. You can kind of see, like, intermittently it kind of spikes and hits the solid red, okay? So you do want to pay attention to this number, just to be kind of on the safe side, because you don't want clipping in an absolute sense, meaning you've hit the peak limit of the detector, which in this case is 65,500 counts approximately, okay? So I want to back this down so we're at least several thousand counts below the clipping point, okay, which we are now, okay? So now we can safely adjust the contrast limits manually and not worrying about having clipping in any absolute sense. Okay, so that was the video I wanted to share with you about adjusting your contrast limits and adjusting your detector gain and offset manually. So hope you found that useful. Take care, everybody. Hope you're having a good Friday.